Hello, and welcome to the Death and Sex Podcast. I am Stephen Thomas, and with me always is Dr. Kailey Bradley.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year! It's the first episode of 2026. Woo! Party! Hopefully the first of many. We had a bit of a lull there. We hit a slump. Life got in the way. Work got in the way. But I have deliberately structured out a schedule where we will have regular updates of these, hopefully with guests, maybe some counselors, maybe some other mental health professionals, friends, maybe family, I don't know. Dogs, might have some dogs on here.
Oh man, that would give us all the views, wouldn't it?
It would, but no cats. I draw the line at cats.
But I like kitties.
No cats.
You're allergic, in all fairness, so we won't subject you to that.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Anyway, we're really glad to be back. Glad to be here today. It's been a while, but yeah, to start us off for the year, Kailey, I know you've got, I think, a pretty good topic. We've touched on it, I think, a little bit, but just going to talk about a little bit more today. Do you want to introduce our topic?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we have touched on this in prior episodes, but
maybe not.
Yeah, we're going to talk today about infertility grief, and in particular, how infertility grief can often be an example of disenfranchised grief. And I'll define that later on. But this is I would say, a topic that is personal and also something I do specialize in professionally as a counselor. So kind of both and in terms of, personal and professional interest here.
All right. Yeah, we for sure have talked about grief. And I think
Absolutely.
I think we've talked a little bit about disenfranchised grief, but maybe not so much around the topic of infertility. So let me ask, just to get us going, get the ball rolling here. What is disenfranchised grief?
Yeah.
And is it like a franchise, like a McDonald's?
No.
Okay.
No. Man.
You got really excited because I said McDonald's.
I know. I was like, man, I could go for some hash browns. I know.
Yeah. I sent you a reel the other day, by the way. I don't know if you saw it. I sent you a reel, like if you had, this was obviously an AI generated reel, but if you had a potato dispenser and it could dispense any type of potato, we're talking mashed potatoes, we're talking fried potatoes, we're talking French fries, we're talking hash browns, we're talking scallop potatoes, cheesy potatoes. What potato would Kailey pick?
I'm not biased against any potato. I welcome them all. So,
But probably, gun to your head, a potato gun to your head.
Hash browns. Yes, back to our topic at hand. Now that I'm hungry.
It was an important rabbit trail. All right, go ahead. Disenfranchised grief.
Yeah, so this is a term that was developed by Dr. Kenneth Doka, I think in the late 80s, early 90s. And Dr. Doka was doing some research on the grief experience of ex-spouses. So these were people who had gone through a divorce and then their ex-spouse had died. And what was really interesting is that grief of the ex-spouse was often very minimized. Kind of the assumption that you divorced this person, why would you still be, impacted? And so this research that Dr. Doka conducted really expanded and really has become this beautiful umbrella term for types of grief that get minimized, types of grief that get kind of swept under the rug, grief that is not given kind of permission. One of my favorite definitions of disenfranchised grief is somebody kind of saying, it's as if I didn't have the right to grieve. And so additional research that Dr. Doka did, he looked at stigmatized types of losses like suicide loss, overdose loss, non-death losses. Grief is very expansive, and I think we often only associate it with death loss, but I think it is a lot more than just that. So that's kind of a very broad definition of disenfranchised grief. There's a lot more I could say on it, but hopefully that gives a little bit of a snapshot.
No, I think that was great. What Just real quick, what would be like some other examples of disenfranchised grief?
Yeah, I mean, what we're going to talk about today: infertility, reproductive loss, so miscarriage, stillbirth, pet loss is a big one that comes up a lot with kiddos. Again, any type of non-death loss. So breakups. A lot of times we
Yeah.
tell teenagers, "Oh, there's a lot of fish in the sea. You're going to be fine." Um, that's not very validating, is it? Right. So I think any grief experience that doesn't get validated, really.
Okay. Yeah. That makes me think thinking about couples work over here when there's a
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
betrayal of some disenfranchised grief around the betrayal, the loss of the relationship that you thought you had. I mean, also grief if you did have if you were the partner that had an affair and you had to end the other relationship that potentially had some meaning
Mm,
to you to prioritize,
mm,
the other
mm.
relationship, that there's some disenfranchised grief there that, yeah, probably that person wouldn't be allowed to experience because you're supposed to repair the marriage or the primary relationship. You're not allowed to think about that person anymore. That's what comes up for me as I hear you give us some examples.
I think the word there that you said, allowed,
Hmm.
and so much of grief work is giving permission, and that's exactly what often doesn't happen when somebody's experiencing disenfranchised grief. It is not feeling like you have that permission.
Yeah. Probably also in like I'm thinking about speaking for myself here, growing up in a evangelical-ish purity culture
Mm-hmm.
where like, yeah, you had very specific expectations about your body, how you were supposed to act or behave around other people.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking again for myself, as I've left that, I think I've had some grief and loss about lost opportunities of just being able
Sure.
to date or form connections.
Absolutely.
Not that I have any regrets. I like my partner. I like my wife, my spouse. They're pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying though. Yeah. Grieving maybe expectations.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's another really powerful term that I love called non-finite loss. And it's the idea, it's grief over an expected future.
Okay.
And that really, I think, also leads into conversations around infertility.
That's awesome. So, yeah, let's go there. Infertility. What about it?
Yeah. So maybe it would be helpful for me to share a little bit about my own experience. So I was 12 years old when I was diagnosed with a genetic disorder that essentially sent me into premature ovarian failure. Um, Essentially, at 12, I learned that I was not going to be able to have my own biological children. And certainly at 12, that's not really something that you, I think, have the capacity to true
Probably not. No.
yeah, to truly kind of grasp what that means for your life, etc. And so, yeah, it's a lot for a 12-year-old, but in the same breath, like, I think it didn't really hit me until much later that this was, something that yeah, was going to shape and, reframe my life in different ways. And then I think there are different layers to infertility grief as well. I think for me, there was a moment where I thought maybe I was going to be able to pursue IVF, and then quickly found out that because of a heart condition I have, that was probably not going to be the safest option for me either. And so that was kind of another layer to the grief, another door being closed. And so I think there's a lot of layers to infertility grief. I think we don't always talk about it culturally, um, or we don't always create space for the real complicated emotions that I think can emerge for somebody navigating this.
You said not something I could really process at the age of 12. I'm thinking probably I mean, most adults, I think, have a very hard time processing it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
let alone a 12-year-old. But it's such a complicated thing to navigate for anyone, especially when we talk about, yeah, that idea of expectations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think especially too, there are a lot of gendered scripts about what it means to be female, and you kind of have this assumption from the time you're a little girl, right? Like, oh yeah, you're gonna have babies. And so I think when you confront something different, yeah, your assumptions about the way your life's gonna unfold have to change pretty quickly.
Yeah. You talked about the idea of disenfranchised grief is grieving something that normally we wouldn't be allowed to grieve. It feels like
Hmm.
infertility, I would think, you know, would be something that, oh yeah, that makes sense to grieve. Where do
Hmm.
you see that being either culturally, socially, or even in your own experience, something that you weren't necessarily allowed to grieve, or other people aren't always allowed to grieve?
Yeah, I think for me too was maybe more internal. As far as, well, it's not a death loss, and so
Mm.
yeah, I think in my brain, before I kind of dove into the work I do now as a grief counselor, I think I automatically associated grief with death loss. And so something that wasn't a death, like, how can you grieve something you never had? Like
It's
it
something
felt,
intangible
mhm,
that
yeah,
you can't.
hmm, yeah, yeah. And so I think sometimes it's very hard for us to wrap our heads around, yeah, grieving something that feels a little elusive, or that feels, yeah, like you said, not tangible.
Yeah. Brag about you for just a second. Your area of, your research is to get your PhD, your doctorate, and all that has a lot to do with children and grief and
Mm-hmm.
loss.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about, and I don't know if this would hit the disenfranchised grief for you, if it would fall into this category. I'm just thinking a lot of people, even in our work as counselors, working with parents, or even talking to other people who are parents. There's sometimes, even though you have this research, you have this knowledge, a lot of times it can be very easy to dismiss the views, the knowledge of a very well studied individual. If they don't have
Mm-hmm.
kids, their opinion doesn't count as
Yeah.
much. Would
No,
you
I
say that hits the disenfranchised grief part?
totally, totally. Just that maybe minimization of, yeah. Well, and I think I do it to myself too. It's funny. We were talking yesterday in a supervision session with some counselors about how we invalidate ourselves often.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I'm very guilty of that. And even internally going through that process of like, well, what do I really have to offer or to say about parenting and kiddos, because I don't have kids of my own. So absolutely that comes up. Absolutely. And it's something I have to kind of continually remind myself that just because I don't have my own kids, in some ways it gives me, I think, a different vantage point on
Okay.
child rearing. There's, because I'm not in the weeds, I'm able to kind of have maybe a little bit of a bird's eye view of child and human development.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it can be very hard for other people to always accept that. I have to imagine for them, it stems from a place of their own fear of not being good enough,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
might be another type of disenfranchised grief while we're talking about it. But I
There's
appreciate your
yeah.
insight into that.
Well, and it's interesting you bring that up, because I think I've worked with so many parents who do experience levels of grief because they think parenting is going to look one way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe they have a kid with chronic health issues. That's what my dissertation was on. Parents
Mm,
who have kids with
mm-hmm.
chronic health conditions, and then they have to kind of reorient and kind of reimagine what parenting can look like, parenting the kid they have, not the kid that maybe they quote unquote thought they were going to have, right? I think that comes up a lot with, like I said, parents who have kids with chronic health conditions. So there's some disenfranchised grief, I think, in parenting, right? Or, maybe there's these images that parenting is going to be this really beautiful, amazing thing. And, parents will say to me, yes, and, it's a really hard, difficult, impossible thing, right? I love my kids, but it's hard. And so again, giving space and permission for all of those feelings is really, I think, the most important way that we can support each other as humans through the process of disenfranchised grief, whatever that is, whatever we're we're kind of grieving.
A few episodes back, we talked with Dr. Bethany about
Mm-hmm.
complicated trauma
Yeah.
and complex PTSD. I'm kind of curious, are we hitting some complicated grief or traumatic grief, or even maybe we talk about, in your own experience, learning about this at a young age. Are we
Mm-hmm.
hitting some complicated PTSD sometimes for some individuals who are navigating infertility?
I think that one of the biggest pieces that I assess for, and I don't even love that word assess, but when I'm working with individuals, I want to know what their support system looks like. And I think for me, in my experience of pediatric illness, I mean, both the infertility piece, but just so many other dimensions of being a kid in and out of hospitals and being a sick kid. Like there's a lot that goes into that. And I don't always know that my medical providers provided the emotional support that myself and my family needed. And I think that maybe causes, some complicated, reactions and responses. And I always say complicated grief is not pathological. It's just that there's some additional barriers, some roadblocks, so to speak. And I think we just need spaces to work through those. So, for me, actually doing my dissertation on pediatric illness was really healing.
Is
It was
your own
really
kind of your own
helpful.
type of therapy?
It was. It was in a lot of ways to just know that my experience wasn't unique. And also it felt really empowering to kind of work through some kind of action points as far as like, okay, here's some things that I think would be helpful for families who were in my situation. And so, yeah, it was very empowering.
So you actually were, physician heal thyself. You actually did do a little bit of that. Unlike a lot of people who are just like, oh yeah, do as I say, not as I do.
I, I love the concept of the wounded healer by Henry Nouwen. He's one of my favorite
Yeah.
writers. And
Hmm.
I think sometimes as helpers, we think we have to hide those wounds. And certainly, when we're in a counseling session, it's never about, us in that moment, right? But we do bring our humanity into that space and we do bring our experiences. And so I think in many ways I see myself as a bit of a wounded healer.
What else should we know about infertility, Kailey, or grief around infertility?
Yeah, I would say that it's not something that necessarily resolves, and that's true with all grief, right?
Yeah.
We learn to integrate it in our lives in different ways, but it's never something that you have a nice, neat, tidy, like, okay, I'm done grieving. And it does come, I think, I mean, it's kind of cliche, but in waves, right? There are days where I don't think about it, and then there are days where it does hit me, or there's something that is tweaked a little bit. And that's normal. So I would say for folks who may not quite understand even their own grief responses and say like, hey, I thought I was like doing okay. I thought I wasn't bothered by this quote anymore. And then again, something pops up. I'm like, it's very normal.
I'm thinking about personal experiences as the spouse of somebody who
Mm-hmm.
has a partner that we knows that they're not able to have kids. I mean, speaking from my personal experience, like that wasn't an issue for me. I'm sure for some people that would be harder. I think the priority for me was the person that I was with, and this is just one of the. I wouldn't even say in any way a deficit. Just one of the things that comes along with being in the relationship. I think I've had a few moments of, and we've talked about this. You and I have. I've had a few moments of just like, huh, what if? And I know we've gone
Mm-hmm.
down the road of talking about different things like adoption and fostering and what that would that look like. I think one of the best things that came out of those discussions, and one of the things that I really love about how we've worked through our shared experience around
Mm-hmm.
infertility, is we've said we're giving birth to other things.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the ways I think that it's been really helpful and meaningful to me is we give birth to a home with two puppies that need a lot of attention because they're very needy.
Well, they think they do.
Well, right. But we also, we gave birth to a counseling practice that in the last few years has been really a joy and awesome to see kind of flourish a little bit. You gave birth to a PhD, which would have been possible but harder to do
Mm-hmm.
if we had
Sure.
kids.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, as a result of not having kids, we had the resources to also pursue those things. I mean, we're both we're both in debt and still, paying off student loans. But yeah, I can only imagine how much harder that would have been. And yeah, if kids had been the picture. So that idea of we get, we get to give birth
Yeah.
to other things that aren't necessarily little little petri dishes running around the house, right?
I also I heard a concept, oh gosh, it's been pretty recently, of kind of village aunties. And I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot about how in Western culture it's very, very nuclear family, mom, dad, kids. And there's a lot of prioritization on kind of that hierarchy and that structure. And I think about other cultures where, again, it's cheesy, but it's really true that it takes a village to
It does.
raise and to help, foster children, right? And I really love that concept that I think it's so beautiful when a village of adults can speak into the lives of kids. And I think a lot about my work in childhood bereavement is being able to kind of be that for grieving kids, to be a space where grieving kids know that like they're accepted and it's okay. So I really like that concept of being a village auntie a lot. And that's been really important to me.
Yeah, if I can also tag on one other reason that I don't think it bothered me or was even a second thought when we were getting together and talking about building a life together. Um, I think I know two very important people in my life growing up was a couple, Chuck and Rose Lewis. They were we called them our adopted grandma and grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
And they were two people, they were a couple that didn't have kids.
Yeah,
And they were really able to make a big difference, at least in my life. And
absolutely.
I love
Yeah,
to tear up a little bit talking
it's
about,
okay. Yeah.
because Chuck isn't with us anymore.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, they were very important. And so the idea
Mm-hmm.
of being able to do that for other kids,
Yeah.
that's beautiful to me.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well,
So
yeah,
so I'm so
absolutely.
sorry. No, yeah, just so with infertility, even though there's loss, there's also birth. There's life in other ways.
Yeah, and I think that's true with grief in general, right? I was listening to the Anderson Cooper. What is his podcast called? That's terrible. I recommend it
I
all
don't
the
know, but
time.
it's super awesome,
It's
and you should
super
check it
good,
out.
but he was talking on the podcast last night about, yes, grief is impossibly hard and it's painful, but there's joy also, and
Yeah,
it's both and. So much of life is both and. And as somebody who is a queen of black and white thinking,
that's like putting it mildly.
that that binary feels really comforting to me, but it's not how grief operates, right? It's all of the feelings at once. It is like you said it. There are pieces that are, yeah, that are difficult, but there are also pieces that are really beautiful, because that's what it means to be human, and that's to grieve is to be human.
Good stuff today. Good stuff.
One last piece here too, when you mentioned or asked,
Yeah.
what would you want people to kind of know or to understand about infertility grief? I think one of the things that I really struggled with was the impact, again, not just of infertility grief, but of pediatric illness on my conceptualization of spirituality. I think I viewed my infertility and my pediatric illness as punishment. God was pissed at me. That was what my brain, that's how I interpreted.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't make sense to me, because I thought I do all the right things. I'm a good kid. I get good grades. I'm well behaved. Why is God punishing me? And I would just, I guess, encourage our listeners that piece, the impact of this on our spirituality is really, really difficult. And for me, it's been and it continues to be a lifelong process, that just because you're navigating something like this does not mean you're bad. It does not mean you're being punished. It means you're human and we all navigate different things, right? Like, it's not a punishment. It's not an indictment. It is, everything does not happen for a reason. Everything just happens, period. So I think that's an important reminder too, again, to give space for people who may have those spiritual questions that surround some of these topics.
Why do you think we go to that, Kailey? Because it's very common. I heard it all the time growing up, and I still hear it. Things happen for a reason. Why do you think we go to that space of things happen for a reason?
Because then we can prevent it from happening to ourselves, right? Like, if we can if we can pinpoint a reason, then we can prevent it. And it gives us a sense of control. And I validate, when we're in grief and when we're experiencing difficult things, what we want is a sense of control, because our world feels out of control, right? And it's very hard to sit in, maybe there is no reason for this. Maybe there is no great lesson that you're learning through this. Maybe it just is, But I think, again, we like black and white thinking. We like binaries, and so much of this is mystery, and is the unknown, and is the just sitting in the questions.
Which is scary.
It's super scary, and that's so difficult for myself and for so many of my clients. And I never want to shame anybody for saying, like, I just want an answer.
Yeah.
I often tell my clients, I wish I could give you one. I wish that I had a formula that gave you the explanation that you needed, right? But what's more important, I think, is the support that we can offer one another. I think that is what it is to be. I know I said a minute ago, to be human is to grieve. And I think also to be human is to support one another in that grief. And it's so disenfranchising to circle back to our disenfranchised grief conversation. It's so disenfranchising, I think, when good intentions, but when we say things like, everything happens for a reason, it really ends up minimizing, I think, our experience.
Well said.
Thanks.
All right. Anything else we want to say about infertility before we get out of here today?
Just validate. It's hard. And so if you're listening to this and it feels a little activating, take care of yourself in whatever way that looks like. I always say that to my grief counseling students. When we talk about these things, it activates our own experiences. So that's normal. Be gentle with yourself always. And however we can be a resource and a support. And we're here for that. We're here for these types of conversations. And we promise we won't give you answers.
All right. Well, before we get out of here today, Kailey, what are we reading, watching, and/or playing?
Watching, we just finished Pluribus on Apple TV. We probably need to do a whole podcast episode.
Man, talk about
Pluribus.
Talk about grief. Talk about grief. Oh my gosh.
I know. So good. So good.
It's real good. Good. If you haven't watched it, check it out. We won't spoil anything here, but you should definitely be watching Pluribus. Good stuff. What are we reading?
I am trying to read a little more fiction.
For you?
Yeah. Just
Kailey, how many books did you read last year?
I forget. A little less than 200.
192 was the number.
Was that the number? You remember? That's so funny. You remember that?
Yeah. For Christmas, I got Kailey a little wooden stand that has numbers, and it says Kailey's books of the, how many books she's read in the year, and it's just, you can tally. And so we put the number up there, and the number was 192. I remember because your mother was 100 books behind you.
Don't throw her under the bus. No.
I'm not. 92 books. 92 books. Come on, that's a lot. That's I've read maybe 9 or 2 books in the last year.
It's all right.
I've skimmed a lot,
Yeah,
but to sit down and read a whole book,
it's all right.
I am not great at that. I'm playing Arc Raiders. It's a great extraction shooter. If anybody out there knows what that means, I am not a multiplayer video gamer, but Arc Raiders has just hit some sort of weird button for me that's like, keep coming back to it. It's a lot of fun and some really great, interesting, like social experimentation that can happen in this video game that you can't do in other video games, because you can potentially team up with other players, just strangers, or you can try and shoot them and take their loot. So it's just this weird social engagement. There's a whole bunch of research. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of research that could be done around this game. It's really fascinating. It's a lot of fun.
Good deal.
All right. Well, that wraps it up for today. Hopefully, we'll be back again real soon. Like I said, we've got a schedule. If we stick to it, we should have some regular content dropping. Again, I'm Stephen Thomas, and this was Dr. Kailey Bradley, and we are the Death and Sex Podcast, brought to you by Refuge Counseling, and hopefully we will be back in your ears very soon. Have a good day, everybody.
Everyone.
You've been listening to the Death and Sex Podcast, brought to you by Refuge Counseling. Big thanks to our producer and editor, Taylor Ruiz, for making us sound way better than we do in real life. You can catch us in all of your favorite podcast apps, so hit subscribe because, who doesn't want more death and sex in their feed? And if you really want to keep the fun going, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Until next time, talk about the stuff nobody else will.